Aging is not the gentle, inevitable slide we once believed it to be. It is not destiny. It is not fixed. It is not a slow surrender written into your DNA like the final chapters of a book you cannot rewrite. Aging is a language, one your cells speak every second of your life. A language written in chemical marks, broken circuits, disrupted instructions, and fading signals. And for the first time in human history, we have learned not only how to read this language, but how to speak back to it. That's the breakthrough. That's the revolution. And it begins not with decades of effort, not with hours in a gym, not with complicated routines, with something astonishingly small, 10 minutes. 10 minutes that act like a biological switch. 10 minutes that turn on the genes of resilience, of repair, of youthful function. 10 minutes that send a message deep into the nucleus. Reverse this, restore this, rebuild this, because the truth is simple and radical at the same time. Your cells are listening. They are listening to how you eat, how you breathe, how you move, how you recover. They are listening to every signal of stress, every pulse of energy, every moment you push just slightly beyond comfort. And those tiny pulses, those short, sharp signals, are what reawaken longevity pathways that have been with us since the beginning of human evolution. Your body was designed for a world that was difficult, a world where food was scarce, cold was common, heat was intense, threats were everywhere, and movement was not optional. Movement was survival. In that world, the body built a sophisticated mechanism to keep you alive through stress, a system of protective genes called sirtuins, guardians of your genome, repair crews of your DNA, conductors of your mitochondria, the decision makers that determine whether your cells remain young or grow old. But here's the paradox. Sirtuins only activate when your body senses meaningful challenge, not suffering, not punishment, just the right dose of difficulty. And that is why 10 minutes becomes extraordinary. Because in a modern world of comfort, convenience, and constant ease, 10 minutes of well-applied stress is enough to remind your cells what they were built to do. 10 minutes of effort becomes a spark. 10 minutes becomes a message. Wake up, protect this body, strengthen these cells, rebuild what has been lost. We tend to imagine aging as a slow decay, but biologically, aging is a system failure, a loss of information. And like any system, it can be restored when you remind it how to function. Exercise, when done with intention and intensity, is one of the most potent reminders. Not hours of training, not long punishing routines, just short bursts of deliberate exertion, the kind that amplify oxygen use, challenge the mitochondria, and trigger a cascade of molecular repair. Your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells, respond to intensity like flames respond to oxygen. Push them briefly, and they grow stronger, faster, more capable. Leave them unchallenged and they shrink, weaken, and contribute to the fatigue and fragility we associate with age. But when you create short demands on your muscles and lungs, even just for 10 minutes a week, your mitochondria activate ancient survival programs. They multiply, they repair themselves, they become more efficient. And with every improvement in mitochondrial function, your biological age shifts in your favor. It is a quiet miracle hidden in plain sight. Just 10 minutes. Performed in intervals that raise your heart rate, challenge your breathing, and remind your body of its primal strength, can reduce inflammation, sharpen insulin sensitivity, elevate NAD levels, and wake up sirtuins that have been dormant, waiting for your signal. Most people believe longevity comes from big changes, but biology favors consistency over extremity. A single session of intense movement triggers a chain reaction inside you. The activation of AMPK, the increase of oxygen uptake, the mobilization of stored energy, the creation of mild stress that your body interprets as a reason to rejuvenate. Because the truth is, your body never wanted to age rapidly. It ages rapidly because it has stopped receiving the signals that remind it to stay young. Evolution built us to thrive on small challenges. A sprint across a field, a quick climb up a rock, a rapid escape from danger. These weren't workouts, they were survival. And in survival, the strongest genes awaken. 10 minutes of intensity taps directly into this ancient system. This is why studies keep returning to the same observation. Short bursts of vigorous movement, less than the time it takes to make a cup of tea, can increase lifespan markers, reduce disease risk, and improve cardiovascular health more efficiently than long, slow, repetitive exercise. Because the body values the signal, not the duration. 10 minutes is not the shortcut. It is the activation. It is the reminder. It is the biological conversation between you and your future self. Your cells asking, how much longer do you want me to protect you? And you answering with movement that says, for as long as possible. And so the question becomes this: if just 10 minutes a week can shift the arc of your aging, why do so many people never begin? Because they think aging is inevitable. They think youth fades because time demands it. But aging is not the passage of time, it's the accumulation of lost information, and 10 minutes is enough to begin restoring it. This is the promise. This is the proof. This is the door you can open right now. Yet what happens inside the body during these brief moments of intensity is far more profound than what most people imagine. When the muscles contract rapidly, when your breathing deepens, when your heart begins to push with greater force, a cascade of biological signals erupts like sparks in a dark engine. Your cells sense the stress, not as a threat, but as a challenge they must rise to meet. And in the seconds that follow, they turn on defenses that would otherwise remain asleep. This is hormesis, the principle that small, controlled stress makes you stronger, the cold plunge that wakes your system, the heat that tests your limits, the fast that sharpens your cells, the sprint that reminds your heart what it means to push blood with purpose. Every time you create this controlled tension, the body whispers, adapt, strengthen, renew. Inside the nucleus, where the instruction manual of life is stored, sirtuins begin to move like guardians walking the walls of a city at night. Their job is not simply to repair DNA, it is to coordinate the entire system of cellular survival. They sense the drop in energy, the increase in NAD demand, the hormonal cues triggered by effort, and through this intelligence, they decide how your body should respond. More repair, more resilience, more restoration. This is why the right kind of stress slows aging. It activates the architects of longevity. As this awakening continues, mitochondria begin to shift. These engines of energy are not fixed objects. They fuse, divide, grow, and reorganize themselves depending on how you live. A life of comfort makes them lazy. A life of strategic challenge makes them powerful. When you push them through high-intensity bursts, even for a few minutes, they undergo a process called mitogenesis, creating new mitochondria, enhancing oxygen use, and elevating your entire metabolic intelligence. Strength returns not only to the muscles, but to the cells themselves. This is what people forget. Longevity isn't about living long. It's about staying capable of climbing stairs without pain, capable of remembering names without hesitation, capable of waking with energy instead of exhaustion, capable of living, not just existing. 10 minutes a week begins this transformation because it sends the strongest biological demand. We need more capacity. And when the body hears this signal, it responds with growth, not decline. Meanwhile, blood vessels respond to intensity with their own kind of renewal. The endothelial lining, often damaged by years of inactivity, begins releasing nitric oxide, relaxing arteries, improving circulation, and delivering oxygen and nutrients more efficiently. These changes ripple outward, measurable not in years but in function. Fewer blood sugar spikes, smoother cardiovascular rhythms, better blood flow to the brain. And this matters deeply because the brain is not exempt from aging. It is one of aging's earliest victims. Yet, during short bursts of intense movement, a neurochemical shockwave occurs. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often called miracle grow for neurons, surges. It strengthens synapses. It promotes neuroplasticity. It supports memory and learning. In these moments, the brain becomes younger, more adaptable, more alive. This is why so many people report clarity after brief, intense exercise, not because the body is tired, but because the brain is awakened. It remembers its purpose. It returns to a state of readiness. The fog lifts, the systems align, and you feel perhaps for the first time in years that you are not declining. You are rewiring. This too is the proof. The brain rejuvenates when the body is challenged. You are not meant to drift into cognitive decline. You are not meant to fade. You are meant to adapt as long as you signal your biology correctly. Aging accelerates in the absence of challenge. Youth persists in the presence of it. And so, 10 minutes becomes more than a practice. It becomes a philosophy, a reminder that your body is not fragile, that your age is not a sentence, that you are not defined by the calendar, but by the messages you give your cells. Because aging is not caused by time passing. Aging is caused by systems disconnecting. When you challenge your biology, you reconnect them. When you inject effort into your routine, even briefly, the epigenetic clock slows its ticking. When you rise out of comfort, your blueprint for youth reactivates. And somewhere deep in the machinery of life, the silent architecture that once made you strong begins to rebuild itself, brick by molecular brick. not because you forced it, but because you reminded it. The modern world has tried to convince us that aging is passive, that decline is normal, that weakness is destiny. But the science is unmistakable. Your body is not a failing machine, it is a responsive one. And even the smallest dose of intentional effort can revive the circuits that define your future. 10 minutes is enough to reclaim authority over your biology. 10 minutes is enough to send a message across your cellular landscape: we are not done. And the body listens. It always listens. With every passing day, your body is quietly asking you a question: what kind of future do you want me to build? It does not speak in words. It speaks in chemistry, in gene expression, in electrical signals, in the silent language of proteins folding and unfolding to keep you alive. Every breath, every choice, every moment of movement or stillness becomes part of a conversation with your biological age. And when you give it 10 minutes of intensity, you're not simply exercising. You're altering that conversation entirely, because during those minutes, something extraordinary happens beneath the surface. The energy demands rise, glucose transport accelerates, oxygen surges through the bloodstream, and your cells sense a profound shift. We must become more efficient. Efficiency is youth. Inefficiency is aging. And so the machinery of longevity begins turning again. This is where the power of NAD becomes impossible to ignore. NAD is the golden thread that ties metabolism, DNA repair, and resilience together. It is the molecule sirtuins rely on, the currency they spend to protect you. But NAD declines with age, plummeting to half its youthful levels by middle age. Yet during bursts of intense effort, your cells begin to rebuild this currency. They raise NAMPT, an enzyme essential for replenishing NAD. They accelerate recycling pathways. They prime the system for restoration. In those moments, you are literally feeding the engines of longevity. You are telling your cells, restore, don't decay. And the body responds by amplifying every protective mechanism it has spent millions of years perfecting. Even your genes begin to behave differently. DNA is not a static script. It is a dynamic reactive library constantly reading and rewriting itself in response to your environment. When you challenge your biology, methylation patterns shift. Gene expression changes. Signals that once whispered decline begin to roar regeneration. This is why short bursts of deliberate effort can reduce biological age. You are activating the very software that defines how your body operates. The story of aging is the story of signals. Too little challenge sends the wrong ones. Too much damage overwhelms the system. But the right amount, the deliberate, intentional challenge of 10 minutes of exertion, creates a profound equilibrium. You become stronger because your body decides strength is necessary. You become younger because your body believes youth is required. Consider your immune system. As you age, immune cells become sluggish, slow to respond, burdened by accumulated dysfunction. But when your heart rate rises, when your lungs expand, when your blood flows with purpose, immune cells are flushed into circulation. They reawaken. They clear damaged cells more efficiently. They patrol more aggressively. They operate like they once did in your youth. This is not magic. This is biology honoring the signals you send. And then there is inflammation. The silent driver of chronic disease, the smoke that rises from smoldering dysfunction within the body. Inactivity fuels this fire. Metabolic sluggishness amplifies it. But intense bursts of movement extinguish it. Anti-inflammatory cytokines rise. Damaged cellular components are removed through autophagy. Mitochondrial cleanup accelerates. You are not just reducing inflammation, you are reshaping the internal environment that determines your long-term health. The heart, too, undergoes transformation. The muscle fibers strengthen. The chambers pump with greater efficiency. The electrical conduction becomes more stable. Even the arteries become more elastic. Elasticity is youth. Rigidity is aging. And with the right stimulus, elasticity returns. 10 minutes creates a shockwave through your entire system, not a harmful shock, but a wake-up call. A reminder that this body is meant to move, to resist the pull of entropy, to rise against the weight of time. But the most profound change occurs not in your muscles, not in your heart, not in your cells, but in your identity. Because each time you push yourself, even briefly, you reclaim authorship over your life. You break the narrative that aging is decline. You break the story that you must weaken with each passing year. You break the belief that you are at the mercy of time. You begin to see aging not as a curse, but as a negotiation, one in which you possess far more power than you were ever taught. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize the difference between movement and momentum. Movement is motion. Momentum is meaning. The 10 minutes you contribute each week create momentum that carries into your choices, your mindset, your discipline, your resilience. Suddenly you eat differently. You sleep differently. You speak to yourself differently. Because you are no longer living in reaction, you are living in creation. You begin to feel it, the improvement in energy, the softness lifting from your thinking, the return of vitality, not as memory but as experience. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing your future is not predetermined. This is the gift of intentional stress. It strengthens your biology. It strengthens your identity. It strengthens your life. And slowly, subtly, but undeniably, the question shifts. The body no longer asks, "What future do you want me to build?" It begins to say, "I am building it." And you can feel for the first time in a long time that age is not catching you. You are outrunning it. And when you realize that your body is not drifting toward decay, but responding to every signal you send it, a new kind of responsibility appears. Not the heavy kind that feels like a burden, but the empowering kind that feels like a door unlocking from the inside. Because the truth is, your cells are listening. They are listening when you breathe deeply instead of collapsing into stress. They are listening when you choose movement over stagnation. They are listening when you expose yourself to challenge instead of comfort. And they are listening when you decide that the story of your life is not defined by the date on your birth certificate, but by the choices you make in the quiet, invisible corners of everyday existence. Every time you step into discomfort, even for seconds, something extraordinary happens. Cold triggers a surge of norepinephrine that sharpens focus and reduces inflammation. Heat elevates heat shock proteins that clean up misfolded proteins and protect your cells from stress. Intense exercise activates PGC-1 expanding mitochondrial networks like branching roads supplying fresh energy to every organ. These aren't abstract scientific terms. They are biological codes being rewritten in real time. You are not aging because your cells are broken. You are aging because your cells are losing the signals they once understood clearly. And every beneficial stress you introduce is a new line of instruction, a new language of renewal. Something begins to shift inside you when you understand that longevity isn't about living forever. It's about living fully. It's about waking up with clarity instead of fog, strength instead of hesitation, purpose instead of fear. It's about giving your future self the gift of capability. Most people don't realize they are negotiating with their future. Every choice today is a contract signed with tomorrow's body, tomorrow's mind, tomorrow's identity. And when you choose habits that strengthen your biology, you are building a future that can hold your dreams without collapsing under the weight of time. The simple truth is no one arrives at vitality by accident. Longevity is engineered through small repeated signals that accumulate into resilience, and resilience is built through the friction you willingly embrace. Fasting sharpens metabolic flexibility. Exercise pushes mitochondrial networks to expand. Cold strengthens neurotransmitter pathways. Heat forces cells to clean themselves. Light anchors your circadian rhythm. Sleep repairs DNA and restores memory. None of these tools replace the need for the others. They weave together into a single system, a biological symphony tuned toward longevity. And when you combine these tools with purpose, real purpose, the system amplifies. Purpose is not poetry. It is a physiological force. People with clear direction live longer because their biology responds to meaning as if it were medicine. The mind and the body are not separate realms. They are one ecosystem. A stressed mind accelerates aging even in a fit body, and a grounded mind strengthens biological pathways even in someone just beginning their journey. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your identity, they all feed into the epigenetic switches that control gene expression. You are always programming yourself, whether consciously or not. Discipline becomes easier when you remember that every action is a vote for the person you are becoming, and your biology listens to every vote. With each small act of strength, your cells begin to behave as if youth is not something behind you, but something reactivated inside you. They repair DNA faster. They remove damaged proteins more aggressively. They produce energy more efficiently. They respond to stress with flexibility instead of collapse. In every measurable way, they begin to behave younger than the calendar suggests. And that is the revolution. Not denying aging, but transforming it. Not chasing immortality, but maximizing capability. Not fearing time, but reshaping your relationship with it. When you look at those who age slowly, you'll notice they are not the ones living in comfort. They are the ones training their bodies to adapt. They are the ones who choose movement over stagnation, discipline over chaos, intention over drift. They are the ones who understand that life rewards those who treat their biology with respect, challenge, and belief. Because at the core of human longevity lies a powerful truth. Your body is designed for survival, but it thrives on challenge. Comfort weakens signals. Stress, in measured doses, strengthens them. And when those signals strengthen, you do not just feel younger. Your biomarkers begin to reflect it. Lower inflammation, higher mitochondrial function, longer telomeres, faster DNA repair, better metabolic control, stronger cognitive performance. These are not miracles. They are consequences. And consequences can be engineered. So when you step into the next day of your life, remember this: you are not fighting aging. You are communicating with it. You are negotiating with your biology. You are instructing your cells to fight, to repair, to restore, to rebuild, and they respond, always. Because aging is not a straight line, it is a dialogue. And you are not the passenger, you are the author, the architect, the signal your cells have been waiting for, and the moment you decide to strengthen the message through action, through discipline, through purpose, your biology does something extraordinary. It listens, it adapts, it evolves, and in that evolution, you discover the truth that changes everything. You are not here merely to survive time. You are here to reshape it. You are here to prove what a human life can become when knowledge is paired with courage, when science meets intention, when longevity is no longer a wish, but a choice.